Hi, everyone. My name is Laetitia Barbier. I'm a tarot reader, scholar, and teacher. I work at the crossroads of art history, esotericism, and tarot studies. As you can probably hear, I have a French accent. For the past 13 years, I've been living in the United States, and that experience places me one foot in each of the two main tarot traditions. The Tarot de Marseille, which is heavily rooted in France, and the Anglo-Saxon tarot tradition, which was shaped in the 19th century by the Golden Dawn. I'm also the author of Tarot and Divination Cards, a Visual Archive, a book that came out in 2021. This book is very much my love letter to cartomancy in a broader sense. And I really use here the term cartomancy in the French sense of that term. The art and practice of reading fortunes with cards, any type of cards, from playing cards to tarot to anything else. For those of you who don't know my work yet, I often describe my practice and my relationship to cartomantic material as a dual one. On one side, I approach tarot and any other card-based divination system as a cultural object. With my background in art history and iconographical studies, I seek to understand the historical, social, and even political context in which those images emerged. I try to answer questions such as, what did those images meant at the time of their creation, and what do they mean to us today? And what other perspectives have shaped their journeys across time? But on the other side, I'm also a tarot reader, and I see reading cards as a poetic and orphic art form. For me, tarot reading is a private healing spectacle, a sacred performance for an audience of one person, weaving together symbolism, language, and imagination. There is something profoundly valuable in this subjectivity. To remain with ambiguity, to embrace the poetic license of holding both knowledge and mystery at once is, I believe, what truly makes art a living magic. Tarot in particular carries this rare capacity to move us, to unsettle us, and even to rewire the way we think and feel, opening us up to the unforeseen and somehow helping us to grow. Although my work and research often revolve around history, I don't identify as a tarot historian. I set one foot in each side of the fence. Tarot as an objective, but also as a subjective place, all at once. And for me, those two impulses, the historical and the poetic, they do not cancel each other. They exist a little bit like the horses in the chariot card. Two different horses, unbridled, yet moving together, leading us toward answers and discoveries in tandem. So before we start digging in the iconography of the major arcana, I'm going to give you a couple of historical points so you can understand the truth and the fallacies. Tarot history is a very strange field. It is only able to be done from the evidence of the card themselves. And cards are inherently very fragile. So historians have been piecing the history of cards together. And until the late 19th, early 20th century, this history was very much fantasized. Here are a couple of things that are mostly accepted by most historians. Playing cards arrived in Europe around the 14th century. They arrived through the Mediterranean, Spain, Italy, southern France. The game developed mostly through trade routes, connecting the Mediterranean area with the Arabic world. The cards you see on screen are cards from the 15th century. They were created in Egypt, and they come from the Mamluk Sultanate. The Mamluk Sultanate spanned from the 9th century to the 15th century, and apparently they are the originator of a game, which is usually referred to as the Mamluk game, in which we find the proto-nomenclature of the tarot. The card contained 10 numbered cards of 4 suits: the cups, the coins, the polo sticks, and the scimitars, the curved swords. You have to remember that the Mamluks were horsemen and fierce warriors, and their swords were curved. This is why, if you look at a Marseille deck, in the minor arcana, the swords are round. It comes from here. The Mamluk deck also featured 4 non-figurative court cards. We can distinguish because they have a calligraphic inscription rather than portraits, including the rank of the different courts. It is very likely that that game became popular enough that through trades, it populated the rest of Europe. And tarot itself was born in Italy in the 15th century. During the Italian Renaissance, card games were very, very popular, and the Italian decided to complexify the game of trick-taking by creating a fifth group of cards to make the game more complicated and obviously more fun. So they designed a deck of cards that included the 4 suits that we know: cups, coins, batons, and swords, but including this other group of 22 allegorical cards that they used to call triumph. And so the game of tarot was not called the game of tarot at first. It was called the game of triumph, and it was developed in northern Italy in the 15th century. We still have some of those decks. There is a couple of examples of those historical decks. In New York, we have the Visconti Sforza, the Visconti di Madrone. Those decks are very precious, though. They are not everyday card games. The cards are very big. You can see them on screen. What you don't necessarily perceive here is that the cards were actually painted on gold leaf back. And it is very likely that the Visconti Sforza cards were never meant to be played with. They were just meant to be looked at, appreciate, and they are really sumptuous work of art. Over time, this very special allegorical group of cards will be recognized as the major arcana, a term that we really have to understand comes from the 19th century esoteric tarot practice. But it was not the case in the 15th century. Tarot was invented as a game of card, and the understanding of it being potentially used as an esoteric system is something that came way later in the 18th century. Don't worry, we're going to talk about that. Here they are. In that slide, we can see a group of noble people playing the game of tarot. One of the things that is interesting to be reminded is how cross-cultural playing card was from the beginning. The game of tarot was played by noble people and also more modest people. So those images were in everyone's hand. There is also a couple of very interesting examples in which we can see how during the Renaissance, the idea of creating an illustrated card system, card as an unbound book of images, was sometimes used by artists to create something almost like an organized, shuffleable book of the world. This is the case with the so-called Mantegna tarot, which is not an actual card game. It is a series of prints. So technically, you're not supposed to play with those cards. You're supposed to look at them. But the format of card game, the technology of card itself, allowed the author, which by the way was not Mantegna, to create almost like a little organized matrix of the world. And so in that deck, you find cards that are about vice and virtues. You find cards that are about the different rational art forms, different science, also liberal arts. You find a group of cards that are about Apollo and the Nine Muses. You find cards that are about cosmic realities as well, almost as if card was this innovative format that allowed us to manipulate all the different strata of the existing world. It's something that was really understood by Aby Warburg, the famous art historian. And in his very famous Mnemosyne Atlas, he dedicated the panels 50 and 51 on the Mantegna tarot and different tarot cards to start to think about the cards not just as a game, but also as a way to process the world. And so in this class, we're going to explore the major arcana. We're going to do that through some kind of conceptual grouping. Each module is going to have a specific title, and I'm going to try to explain how those cards function together to explain the larger narrative current of the major arcana. To be able to do this, we're going to look at the card in somehow a chronological order. I'm going to always start with some of the most ancient cards, the Renaissance cards, and I'm going to travel through other tarot cards that exist from different stratas, 17th century, 18th century, 19th century. I'm not going to talk only about the esoteric tarot. I'm going to show examples that have nothing to do with esoteric tarot. We're going to look at tarot cards that were invented for play. We're going to look at sometimes cards that were outside of the range of tarot. They're considered oracle cards or different divination system. We're going to look at divination tarot. We're going to look at all sorts of cards with the idea that somehow those images, which are always the same from one deck to the other, whether it's for playing or for divination, they have something to tell us about that culture of image and the symbolism behind them.